Okay, we're looking at section 4.8 for Math 31. And in this section, we'll learn how to solve equations that have fractions in them. Our first example here is n minus 3/16 equals negative 9/16. And I'd like to point out that we have, in this problem here, we have the same denominator on both sides. Excuse me. That makes this easier to work with. You just treat these like we normally would. We'll take that over to the other side and add it. So we're going to have n equals negative 9/16 plus 3/16. And since they have the same denominator, you just combine this, excuse me, and you get negative 6/16. Dividing top and bottom by 2 gives us your final answer of negative 3/8. Okay, you're going to take that approach. Once again, let me mention this, when you have one consistent denominator throughout the problem. This is not the same type of example. You can see that we have a denominator of 6 here and a denominator of 3. And the fact that we don't have a common denominator means that these fractions can't be added or subtracted at this point. So what we're going to do next is to clear the fractions out of the problem. And you do that by trying to come up with the least common multiple of 3 and 6. And that would be 6 itself, since 6 goes into 6, and 3 also divides into 6. And you'll multiply both sides by that least common denominator. When you do that, you have to distribute over on this side because we have a minus inside the parentheses. So we end up with 6k. And then we'll multiply here, and we'll multiply this one by 6 also. All right, so 6 times k is how we start this. Then on the next round, you're taking 6 times 5 over 6. There's a minus involved also, so I'm going to go ahead and put my minus in. 6 times 5 would be 30. 30 divided by 6 would be 5. But easier is to divide first. 6 divided by 6 cancels, and you're just left with minus 5. Now on the other side, we want to do the dividing first. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and then 2 times the remaining number up there would be still 2. And you can see that we've cleared the fractions out of the problem. So now we simply add 5 to both sides. Simplify. And divide in order to get the k by itself. So our answer is 7 over 6. So here's another example of one that has different denominators. You can see we have a denominator of 3 on the left and 4 on the right, which incidentally, these numbers go into 12. So we're going to clear the fractions by multiplying the left and the right by 12. Okay, 12 times 1/3, you can multiply across the top first and then divide by 3, but I usually suggest that you divide first. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 4 times 1 is 4. Then you got to distribute down here because of the plus sign, and that would be plus 12q. On the other side, we have 12 divided by 4. It would be 3, and then times the top. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. And you can see that we've cleared the fractions out of the problem. So we'll take the 4 over and subtract it off the other side. When you simplify, you get 12q equals negative 13. And now we divide to get rid of the times. So your answer is negative 13/12. You could write this as negative 1 and 1/12 if you wanted to unravel the number. But I'm okay with you leaving it as an improper fraction. On example D, we have a little bit different situation. You can see there's no plus or minus in the problem. And when you just have a problem like this that's got a fraction on one side and you'll see in a minute a fraction on the other side, then the easiest way to handle this is not how we did the last one, although that approach would work. You could multiply both sides by 4 in this problem and it would clear the fractions out, and that's not a bad way to do it, but I want you to be familiar at least with another way. We're going to rewrite this as a fraction just by bringing the x, multiplying -3 times x, and on the other side we have 1 over 2. Now when it's in this format, this is called a proportion, and in the case of a proportion, you cross multiply to solve it. So we're going to multiply diagonally here, and that would give -6x, and then on the other direction, when you multiply diagonally, you get 4 times 1, which is just 4. And now we just divide both sides by -6. Our answer needs to be simplified. We'll divide top and bottom by 2. Okay, now if you're not real happy with that proportion approach, you have to know when to use it, and you use it when there's just a fraction on both sides. Then we can take the approach we did on the last problem. So if you'll let me erase this here, I'm going to take a different approach. This is the approach I took on the previous problems. I'm going to multiply both sides here by the least common denominator, which would be 4, since 2 and 4 both go into 4. And there's no distributing to do here since there's no plus sign, so we've just got one multiplication here, and the 4's cancel. So we end up with -3x on the left, and half of 4 would be 2, and we'll divide both sides by -3. Okay, example E doesn't look like a proportion, but if you simply put the left-hand side over 1, you can see that we've got a fraction equal to another fraction. Now, I'm going to rewrite it once more. I want you to know that a negative sign, like on this problem here, you can put it out front like it originally is, but often we put it on top. And you can put it on the bottom, but usually we don't. Okay, so now when you cross multiply in the downhill direction, you get 18m, and in the upwards direction, you get 1 times -5, which is -5. And all we have to do is counteract this multiplication by dividing by 18, and that cancels off to give us our answer. Okay, this problem here has 3 denominators, so we're not dealing with a proportion here. You could simplify the left-hand side and make it a proportion, but we're just going to multiply through by the common denominator. 2 and 3 and 6 all go into 6. So we're going to take this 6 and multiply it throughout. In the first round here, you could say 6 times 4 and then divide by 3, but I usually do the dividing first. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 2 times 4 is 8. And here 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 times -1 is -3. And on the other side, 6 divided by 6 cancels off, and you just get A. And so we're done here. 5 equals A. Now you may notice that we usually put the variable on the left-hand side, so if you really want to, you can write it as A equals 5. But the meaning is the same either way, so that's an optional step. Okay, in this one we have 3 denominators. There's the 2, the 3, and the 4. And so we're going to use 12 as our least common multiple of those. So let's see, 2 goes into 12, 3 goes into 12, and so does 4. Now both of these parentheses have plus or minus in them, so we're going to be distributing on both sides of this problem here. Here's the first round. 12 divided by 2 would be 6, so 6 times t. And the second time, we're multiplying 12 times 1/3. That's 12 divided by 3 times the 1 that's on top, so just 4. And then when we distribute here, 12 divided by 4 is 3. And 3 times t is 3t. And here you get minus 36. Now we have to, in this problem, collect our variables on one side. I typically bring my variables over to the left, and I take the other numbers over to the right. So we have the 6t that's over here, joined by the negative 3t that we bring over from the other side. There's already a negative 36 over here, and when that positive 4 comes over, we have to change the sign to negative 4. Simplifying on the left is 3t, and on the right is negative 40. And we'll divide by 3 here to finish the job. Now, I've said earlier that you can leave it as an improper fraction, but if you really insist, you can say, let's see, 3 goes into 40 13 times, and that would be 39. So one more would make it 40. Okay, last problem here, and this one's from geometry. It's a fairly easy one, though. It talks about we need to find the length of this rectangle, and since that's our unknown, we'll put a variable there. We're given that the side, the width is 3/4 of an inch, and the area is 21 over 8 square inches. Now, area is equal to length times width in this case, and that's a pretty common formula. You should know that even if you haven't had geometry recently. Length times width. So in this case, 21 over 8 is equal to the length, we don't know that one, times the width, which is 3/4. Okay, we're going to clear these fractions out by multiplying by the least common denominator, and that would be 8. So on the left-hand side, that just cancels and gives 21. On the right-hand side, we've got 8 divided by 4 would be 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times x. So now we'll divide both sides by 6. And other than simplifying our answer by dividing top and bottom by 3, we're done. So 7/2, that is 3.5 or 3.5. That's the length. I should put inches on there for the length, but anyway. 7/2 inches, or 3.5 inches. Okay, that does it for section 4.8, and I hope you've learned a lot about how to solve equations when there's fractions involved. The most versatile thing is when you clear fractions from both sides by multiplying through by the LCD, and the last problem, that was the 8. LCD, hang on, least common denominator. All right, so I hope this helped you.